It's 1980. I'm an extroverted high school cheerleader with the requisite almost Farrah Fawcett-like hairdo. But I have a little secret. I really love reading the statistical abstract of the United States. It's chock full of cool data about places and about the way they change and the people that come and go from different kinds of places. I loved it, just loved it. So I graduate from high school and I head off to college, University of Washington. It was a pretty courageous move, I think, because I'm a first-generation college student. No one in my family had graduated yet from college. And I studied journalism because my dad was a journalist. It didn't really make my heart sing, but it was okay. But I took a sociology class called American Communities. And guess what we studied? We studied places and how they change and how people come and go from different kinds of places. You can imagine I loved it. So I graduate with my journalism degree in hand. I worked for 5 years in the Seattle labor market doing a bunch of different kinds of things. Again, nothing made my heart sing, nothing felt like forever. I really wasn't sure what to do. So I moved again, and I also consider this kind of a courageous move, and some people considered it pretty crazy because I moved to the woods. I lived for the summer plus a couple of months in my tent by myself at the edge of the Goat Rocks Wilderness area in the shadow of Mount St. Helens amongst the incredible, towering and majestic Douglas fir. I wanted to give myself some time to think and sort it out. So I got brave and went to the University of Washington campus and knocked on the door of that professor that taught that communities class. And I told him my quandary, and he suggested maybe I should try grad school. I'm like, well, what the heck is that, right? But I moved again, and this time I moved to Rhode Island, where I had been accepted into the PhD program at Brown University. Courageous, a tremendous amount of uncertainty. I had no idea what to expect, but it turns out that Brown University is a fantastic place to study population processes, to study places and how they change, and the different kinds of people who come in and out of different kinds of places. At this point, I've been studying human migration, all of that movement, professionally as a sociologist for 30 years. So that's the story of the moves in my young adult life. Perhaps it triggered some memories for you about your young adult life. As Americans, we will move, on average, slightly over 11 times in the course of our lives. So sociologists love to add up all those numbers, all those moves, all those courageous moves, and find patterns. That's what we do. One obvious pattern that's been very long-standing is age. So here you've got the likelihood of migration, and age is the x-axis. You can see migration increases around college age, and then people move for careers. There's a bump at retirement. We, as individuals, take these courageous steps at these moments in our life when we're seeking some change, seeking some sort of betterment. Like I said, it's a consistent pattern, and it has been for quite some time. So in my migration research, I actually study migration as related to the natural environment, and that has taken me to rural South Africa. What a privilege. I sat on the dusty ground in this household compound on a mat made of straw and grasses while this woman was stirring her food. It was wild food that she had collected from the landscape around the village. She was cooking with fuel wood that she had also collected from the landscape around the village. I also had the privilege of meeting with a blind woman who actually makes those mats, and she does so with reeds and grasses that her daughter collects, again, from the communal landscape around the villages. They sell those mats in order to generate income for the household, a very critical livelihood activity. Another way households in this area make ends meet is through migration. And it's not the migration of whole households going someplace else, it's households sending someone often a young adult, to a city or a different country to get a job, earn some income, and send it back. That money that comes back, that income that comes back, are called remittances. In 2021, there were $700 billion worth of remittances sent to various countries across the global south. That's 5 times the amount of official development assistance to those countries in that same year. You can see how critical that migration is to well-being in so many places across the global south. So my own research question links migration to the natural environment and climate change. The question being, and I've been working on this for a long time, so can we imagine that as the climate shifts, households might need to rely on that migration more frequently, more intensely, because those natural resources they're so dependent upon become unpredictable and perhaps scarce. So my work suggests absolutely. And it's not just my work, but migration researchers the world around have looked at this connection, Central, South America, all sorts of parts of Africa, Asia too, and we find that when households experience environmental stress, environmental strain of different kinds, yes, they're much more likely to send a migrant. So the World Bank used that compilation of work, probably about 15 years worth of effort, to do some projections. And they did some projections related to the kinds of movement we might anticipate in the face of climate change, this climate-related migration. You may have been hearing about it. These are their projections up to 2050, but it's only for migration within countries, not international movement, but movement within countries. And these are big numbers, right? And these are the kinds of numbers that should guide policy and programs and invest in people and places. But of course, what you don't see in these numbers are the people who are the data points, right? Just like in the statistical abstract or that age graph I showed you, that's based on people and their courageous moves. So I want to introduce you to one of those people. This is Jorge. He was his family was one of the families profiled by the New York Times a couple years ago in a piece they did on the Great Climate Migration, is what they called it. So Jorge and his family, rural Guatemala, up until about 2019, they were doing okay with subsistence agriculture and local economic opportunities. Then the rain stopped, and they stayed stopped, and they stayed stopped, and they stayed stopped. And the crops failed, and they failed over and over and over again. Eventually, Jorge's children became desperately malnourished. Their bones became weak. They were stunted in height for their age. They didn't grow properly. The family made what the New York Times called an excruciating decision. And Jorge's father sold his last 4 goats, their last assets, to raise the funds in order to support Jorge and his 7-year-old son to move north. Talk about courage and talk about uncertainty. One point I want to make about Jorge's move is that research shows individuals and families in that situation would rather not move. It's a desperate decision. And you can imagine that was the case here, the way we vilify that decision and the people who come to our borders. The fact that most would like to stay home suggests that investments, right, in the origin villages, diversifying economies, improving food security, enhancing climate resilience, those kinds of investments could make a real difference when it comes to stemming at least part of the migration tide. But I want you now to think back to my little migration story I told you at the beginning, and perhaps that triggered some move memories for you too. We landed in Colorado, lucky us, right? I mean, and 250,000, people moved to Colorado in just 2021. We're all lucky. Maybe we came because we had a job. Maybe we came to look for a job. Maybe we came for college. Maybe we came for some other kind of education. Perhaps some were chasing love. Heck, perhaps some just wanted to ski a little more, play a bit more in the mountains. I get that. Regardless, they're courageous decisions to try something new in a different place for the betterment of your life. So I want to leave with a question about Jorge's courageous decision to head north with his 7-year-old son. He did that in the context of climate change, consistent crop failure, his children's hunger, and the lack of any real local alternative. So here's my question. Given that we, as individuals and a nation on the move for the betterment of our own conditions, given that scenario, can we really blame him for his decision? Thank you.